I'm horny.
We've all been through the process. The long hours, the wide-awake sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the points where you loathe the workload. Yet, art is the one medium where, when it's over, you're saying goodbye to a piece of yourself. Your creative process turns into a process of letting go. You don't want to let go. You're afraid to put yourself out there like that, but you're also greedy. This is your opus, and the second you let it go, it becomes everyone else's. George Lucas once said that movies are never finished. They're abandoned. I agree, and I think Bo Burnham does too. No one wants to turn 30, right? It's something 20-year-olds always say they dread. Hell, Friends managed to stay on the air for a decade just by being about 6 people trying desperately to hold on to that period of their lives and then not knowing what the hell to do once it was gone. It's an arbitrary milestone, sure, but it kind of creates this line between setting up the pieces of our lives and then seeing how they all play out. As a result, there's a certain level of stress and anxiety that can arise during this time. Now imagine turning 30 during the absolute nightmare that was the summer of 2020, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the unrest that was going on at the time. And on top of that, imagine that you're Bo Burnham, comedian, director, musician extraordinaire, having made the decision to return to stand-up after 5 years, having created a brand new repertoire of killer material, having fought off panic attacks and general anxiety to make your art, only to suddenly find yourself forced to work at home anyway, cut off physically from the people you make art for. Even the most passionate creatives might throw in the towel at this point and wait it out, but not Bo Burnham. Bo hunkered down in his house, writing songs, sketches, performing, filming himself, letting his hair grow long, and editing together his most existential work to date, Inside. The results are... oh, holy fucking shit, oh my god, this is incredible. I gotta do a video on this! Remember 8th grade? Remember the way Bo managed to speak to what it was like transitioning to high school? What it was like being 13? What it was like to experience the world at a time where you thought it was drastically changing? And in some ways it was. With Inside, Bo tries to tap into something whose pulse is much harder to put a finger on. The experience of being an artist. The emotional roller coaster that we're sent on every time we create. And even without a pandemic, the isolation that, by nature, we push ourselves into when we get tunnel vision in order to see our project through to the end. And not only does Bo find that pulse, he makes us feel it with him as we spend the year plus that it took him to make Inside with him. Netflix has marketed this as a comedy special, and yet I don't find that to be true. It's really more of a documentary about the process of creating the special and almost about Bo himself than it is a comedy special in its own right. And it works perfectly as a one-man show, and it's so much better for it. Bo even says multiple times throughout that with the world in the state it currently is, a lot of people have bigger concerns than watching a successful white dude rattle off comedy skits for 90 minutes. So what does he do? He uses his expected dose of self-deprecation to poke fun at his platform, with multiple songs and skits centered around his reaction to the calamities society finds itself in and how his voice isn't the one that matters. Bo interrogates the importance, or lack thereof, of him amplifying his own voice, or if what he's doing even matters. And by being honest about the state of the world and his place in it, he makes this film important. It's not the thesis statement for allyship, but it's nice that Bo at least addresses the space he's in rather than pretend everything's normal. Because of course it isn't, and that exacerbates the already difficult process of creating art. Hell, the internet itself, a tool that allows artists to rapidly build and expand their platform, is something that can harm creative people as much as it benefits them. Social media is constantly becoming more vapid, more monotonous, more toxic. All of the world's problems are constantly in our face, and while a creative person can build an entire career now using these platforms, they can also fall apart because of them. A huge reason why Bo has resonated with his generation is because he's not afraid to bite the hand that feeds him. He's certainly benefited from the internet. This very film is being released on a streaming service, but he's unafraid to rail against the unending surge of bullshit that comes with that success. Bo cynically mocks the internet's endless slew of uninspired copy and paste content during White Woman's Instagram, which, despite its bubbly, jubilant, and pop-perfect production, although most every song in this film sounds just as happy, is a snarky jab at how hollow and superficial that particular platform has been almost from its birth. The compositions Bo creates during the sequence are algorithmically perfect snapshots, precise, flawless, almost manufactured. They're perfect mirrors of every generic white girl post you've ever seen on Instagram. Aesthetically gorgeous, yet cliche and forgettable. It makes you question the sincerity and realness of the people behind those posts. Do they genuinely care about anything more than their social clout and image? Well, Bo has an answer for that too, and it's one of Inside's most surprisingly optimistic and heartfelt moments. When the song enters the interlude about the woman's deceased mom, the frame, which for the entirety of the song has been cropped to reflect that of Instagram's aspect ratio, widens to reveal the world and home this white woman is living in before closing back into the Instagram format for, well, while it might be easy to remain cynical and discern that Burnham is, again, mocking the insincerity and attention-seeking nature of the subject, the change in aspect ratio actually suggests that Bo is extending an empathetic hand to the person behind the lens. Similar to how influencers can bury a nugget of sincerity between the endless void of fashioning a self-absorbed, vapid image, for a brief moment, Bo empathizes with the performance, the act they put on, because he can relate as someone who paved his way performing on the internet. He understands the game these influencers have to play, even if he despises their methods and the culture it's created. Ultimately, they're still a real person, and especially during a time where so many of us are depressed or uncertain of the future, appealing to the emotions of someone kind of like him is the most decently human thing he can do. Yes, a white woman's Instagram is an easy, shallow target, but even amongst the vapidness, rare moments of sincerity and vulnerability can peek through, even if it immediately vanishes. And speaking of sanitized lifelessness,
Welcome to the internet.
personifying the World Wide Web, Bo cheerily welcomes us in the beginning of so many awful things on the web, scams and predation alike, exposing the endless diversity of what can be found in your browser. Played out as a polka that constantly increases in tempo, Bo wastes no time veering into discussing the worst the internet can be. Unsolicited nudes, grooming, racist and homophobic conspiracy theories, but it's one line in particular. Be happy, be horny, be bursting with rage. That, while applicable to the effect the internet and social media can have on us, also sums up the Bo Burnham that we bear witness to for 90 minutes during the film as a whole. The final refrain, everything all of the time, is also starkly apropos as Bo not only stretches himself across as many musical styles as he seems capable of performing, but also manages to talk about everything during the film. And with the state of the world, with the state of self-isolation in a pandemic, with the state of Bo Burnham, how can you not talk about everything all of the time? But this is the landscape of art now. Our entire culture has gravitated towards sex, greed, porn, basic white chicks, pop-up ads, instant gratification. Being a true artist like Bo Burnham in the midst of what social media and the internet have turned art into can be daunting. Here you have a creator who is vulnerable and open and competitive, working in a space that rewards vapid anything and everything all of the time BS over sincere blood, sweat, and tears, meaningful work like Inside. Even on YouTube, where creators have worked tirelessly to push the artistic merit of the platform, has only been dampened by the likes of TikTok, who comes along and decimates great content with shallow, bite-sized memes and vapidness, reaping far greater rewards. You know, have people complaining that videos that are less than a minute long take too long to get to the point. The digital age has warped our perception of art and artists, and as a result, while the internet is the hero, the tool necessary for our art to find a worldwide audience, it is also the villain, a black hole of distractions, forcing artists into an uphill battle against a white woman's Instagram. But in the process, something that we find as much if not more than reflection on the world is self-reflection. The ways in which our lives were fundamentally different for over a year, and how many of us had to deal with those changes alone, made self-reflection an inevitability. As with most of the other emotions and ideas that permeate Inside, Bo touches on self-reflection throughout the entire film, but at no point does he do so more bitingly or potently than with his song Unpaid Intern and his reaction video to it. Unpaid Intern, while on the surface a 30-second tirade against working up the ladder and the insanity of the grind, is also kind of an analogy for Bo's work on the special. Sure, it's on Netflix now, and Bo has garnered immense critical acclaim for the finished product, as well as that sweet Netflix cash, but when he was making the film, he was just grinding away at it with no guarantee of satisfaction or profit. Then, the song abruptly cuts out after about 35 seconds to Bo watching his laptop, setting up a parody of every single YouTube reaction video you've ever seen. In the process of mocking reaction videos, however, Bo inadvertently makes the most thoughtful and valuable reaction video that there's probably ever been. Unpaid Intern begins again in the top right corner, and we watch Bo begin to critique his own performance. Except, when the song ends this time, the picture-in-picture cuts to the start of the reaction video we're currently watching. A Drost effect is created from Bo reacting to his song, then reacting to the reaction, then reacting to, and so on. The first time the cycle repeats, he lays down some self-deprecating barbs against reaction videos and how pretentious of himself it was to even do one. But as the layers of reactions increase, his self-doubt and pre-strategized critiques of himself overcome him. After 4 or 5 layers of reactions, Bo stops the video. This is, of course, a skit that Bo set up, but watching his final moment makes you wonder if the emotional outburst was planned or if he actually broke character because of the pressure of making this thing. The worry about whether or not he will actually succeed. Either way, it brilliantly portrays the entire cycle of creating, the fluctuations between confidence and utter self-doubt, the mental roller coaster we go on as creators, the whole process within all of 5 minutes. It's a microcosm of the life of an artist. This comes into play much more intensely as the film progresses. There are several moments where Bo seems doubtful that he'll even find his way to the end of making this thing. He reaches his 30th birthday on camera with absolutely no ceremony. Instead, he laments that his goal of finishing the special before this milestone is now gone and can never be achieved. But with this comes the other side of the coin. Bo might want to finish the special and might beat himself up if he doesn't meet deadlines and goals that he set for himself, but he also doesn't want to reach the end at the same time. The artistic venture is something to do, something to focus on, something to motivate. If he finishes it, where does he go? What does he do? This is the artist's dilemma, portrayed so perfectly, perhaps more so than in any other documentary. We want to complete our opuses, we want to expose our art to people, and we want those same people to pay close attention to it. But at the same time, we pour ourselves into these works. Again, this isn't a new idea, and we've seen it in other making of documentaries, but Bo Burnham places us directly in that feeling with him, and that is why he is unparalleled in his ability to immerse his viewers in the creative experience itself. Being an artist is absurd. Life is absurd. The creative process is a goddamn bastard, but everything that surrounds it can be just as ridiculous. Being stuck inside for a year hasn't mitigated how weird the world is. The world being so ridiculous all the time is kind of the prompt for more or less any art that's ever been created. And when someone like Bo Burnham digs into the weirdness for himself, gives into it rather than dismisses it, the product is pure brilliance. That funny feeling is about things that Bo finds absurd. They might be parts of everyday life, figures in pop culture, or obscure, bizarro commercials, or even, once again, the worst things human beings are capable of. Bo doesn't shy away from flippantly referencing mass shootings as if they're an everyday regularity, because they are now. Why treat them like something more? No one else seems particularly interested in doing so. They become just another piece of our absurd world. But of course, for those of us with an ounce of decency, that type of horror will never really be met with such indifference. Hence, that funny feeling is there again. We don't ever want to be used to this. The climax of the song, Bo acknowledging that we were overdue, but it'll be over soon, once again ties into the making of Inside. He's past his deadlines, but he'll find a way to get to the end somehow, which in and of itself is absurd. We're in a pandemic, and the world has bigger issues at hand than a comedy special. Why worry so much about releasing this one right now? Of course, no art can truly succeed if no one experiences it. Bo needs an audience. An audience is the lifeline to his career. And yet his audience, despite being the thing that keeps his art alive, is one of the things that gets most in the way at times. It's a double-edged sword, where performers are at their most vulnerable in front of an audience, yet can simultaneously hide that vulnerability in the applause or laughter of the audience itself. Bo is famous for having zero patience for hecklers, a staple of stand-up, and even more so, performing live began to take a physical toll on him as well.
You know, I've had 10 panic attacks in my life, 9 on stage,
Oh my
1
God.
on a train between shows. You know, so it's always been linked to this.
By having to make Inside at his home, alone, Bo loses the stresses and sensory overload that an audience can inadvertently contribute to, but he also loses part of the energy that typifies comedy specials. Bo acknowledges this throughout the film, perhaps most directly during comedy, where he presses a button to time canned applause with the song, but he confronts it in the most visceral way during All Eyes on Me. He repeatedly demands the close attention of his viewers, even though he has no audience. He then launches into a dialogue of how he stopped performing live because of the panic attacks and because he needed to get away from a live audience. And then, after years when he was finally ready for an audience again, the world shut down. Bo tries to maintain his connection to an audience, insisting they keep paying attention, until the fact that no audience there reaches a breaking point, causing the song and Bo to collapse to the floor. With no audience, Bo can no longer hide his vulnerability, even if the absence of said audience reduces said vulnerability, and that just creates a feedback loop that can't be reconciled. Ultimately, even if people stress us out, and who hasn't had those moments, we need human interaction. We crave it. It fuels us. It makes us happier and healthier, and the pandemic proved that. Way beyond the need for an audience, we just need people around us. We're numb without it, and this numbness is so perfectly personified in Bo's pitched down voice during All Eyes on Me, in the daze-like atmosphere the song creates. Bo's not necessarily someone who demands adoration, but sometimes you just need that support, especially when you're throwing your whole being into something like this. It's sort of a conflicting back and forth for him, because he hates when an audience is at their worst, but at the same time, an audience and human interaction is irreplaceable. In this moment, Bo Burnham needs some love. There's something that brings all of these ideas together, a grand moment where the brilliance of the film announces itself while also making its thesis statement. The obvious answer as to where the moment comes is probably the closing song, Goodbye, where Bo sums up not only the creation of the special, interweaving melodies and lyrical passages from previous songs into a sort of medley, but also reflects on his life. But that isn't the moment I'm talking about. Rather, it's the final minute or so of the film that really hammers home what it tries, and succeeds, to do. Bo finally leaves his room and goes outside, this place that has become a stranger to him and to us, even if just for the 90 minutes we've spent with Bo, is suddenly unleashed upon him with a blinding light and fury. And what is he met with? Applause. Deafening applause. Like a paroled prisoner who isn't ready to return to the world, Bo immediately turns to go back inside, only to find himself locked out. He's done the special, but he doesn't want to let go of it. He wants to go back in and continue keeping it to himself, but he can't do that anymore. It's no longer just his, it's ours. The audience laughs at his fumbling with the locked door, but maybe they also laugh out of elation because Bo has suffered in front of our eyes to make this, and we're the ones who benefit from its completion. And when it cuts to Bo watching this, deadpan on a projector, for a moment we wonder if art is a victory for all but the artist. But then Bo smiles, and every single creative person in the world can unleash a massive sigh of relief and joy. Finish the project you're working on. It will be worth it. Inside is life-affirming. There's a reason it's connecting with so many people on such a deep, personal level. On the surface, it's because Bo is talking to us, not just at us, like so many other comedy specials do. Bo is being deeply honest with us, not to mention vulnerable. That much is obvious. Art requires that level of sincerity in order to build a bridge to its audience. But to go a little bit deeper into that point, consider this. You're not really watching a comedy special so much as a documentary about Bo Burnham's process creating one. That's really compelling for creative people, but the film also connects with everyone else because it simultaneously documents Bo's experience with the pandemic. It's been a hard year and a half, obviously. Even if you're not a meticulously creative person like Bo is, you can probably see the parallel between Bo trapping himself in the making of Inside for over a year in the way that we as people have literally been trapped inside. Because Bo is being so raw and honest about his experience, it gives a lot of us a sounding board for our own feelings and experiences during the nightmare of the past year. It's one of the most cathartic things that has come out of such an awful situation. It's a document of being trapped during COVID. It's a direct look into the mind of one of the great Western artists working today, something the likes of which very few artists have allowed, and fewer, if any, have permitted us the truly unfiltered version of it that Bo Burnham gave us with Inside. Inside is a wholly unique experience and one of the most vital, helpful pieces of performance art made in the last few years. I don't know about you, but I'm thankful Inside exists. I hope Bo is too. To the creatives of the world, I end with this. We will make it outside again, and the world will applaud when we do.
So yeah, who fucking cares? Fuck you and goodbye, and let's keep going.